You know, when we think about the United Nations, it's just so incredibly easy to picture a quiet, formal building in New York, right? Just a bunch of diplomats wearing earpieces. But to really grasp what this institution is, we need to completely reframe our thinking for today's explainer. It's not just a building. It's a massive, active architecture designed quite literally for human survival.
So how exactly do you stop a third world war? Seriously, imagine living in an era where, in the span of just 25 years, the entire globe tore itself apart, not once, but twice. The architects of the UN weren't just starry-eyed idealists sketching out some utopia. They were terrified survivors, desperately trying to build a firebreak against human extinction.
Here's our quick roadmap for the explainer today. We'll start with the global destruction of the 20th century, check out the blueprint for peace, break down the main organs, dive into the Security Council's power, and wrap up with universal human rights. Let's get right into it.
Part 1. Born from Global Destruction, the Ashes of the 20th Century.
Okay, so the catastrophic failure of the League of Nations and the sheer devastation of two world wars absolutely forced the world's hand. World War I ends in 1918, and they form the League of Nations in 1920 to, promise lasting peace. But it fails. Totally. It just lacked any real power. And by 1939, all that lingering bitterness erupts into World War II, costing billions of dollars and leaving millions dead. It was an absolute breaking point for humanity. World leaders, key architects like Stalin, Roosevelt, and Churchill, they saw the absolute terror of these new atomic weapons. They knew without a doubt that a more powerful, impartial organization was required. The world was practically splitting into two massive blocks, and the atom bomb meant a third world war wouldn't just be expensive. It could literally end civilization as we know it. They needed an impartial platform, and they needed it immediately.
Section 2. The Blueprint for Peace, Writing the Rules of the World.
Flash forward to June of 1945. 50 nations get together at the San Francisco Conference to draft the UN Charter. And these core objectives really enshrine the ultimate goals of the organization: to disarm, decolonize, and develop our world. We're talking about maintaining international peace, developing friendly relations based on equal rights, and actually achieving real cooperation on complex social, economic, and humanitarian problems. And they anchored all these lofty goals on a set of core, non-negotiable principles. The absolute biggest one, to respect the sovereign equality of all its members. The Charter required a strict commitment from every state to settle disputes peacefully, to act in good faith, and to absolutely refrain from using the threat or use of force against anyone else.
Moving to Section 3. The main organs explained, how the machine actually works.
So how do they pull this off? Well, they do it through these 6 primary gears of this giant global machine. We've got the General Assembly, the Security Council, the International Court of Justice, the Economic and Social Council, the Trusteeship Council, and the Secretariat. Now, it's really important to note that almost all of these are headquartered in New York, but there is one very notable exception.
There is a deliberate physical separation to these powers. On one hand, you have the political town hall, the General Assembly buzzing away in New York, but the judicial arm, that's seated all the way across the world at the stunning Peace Palace in The Hague, Netherlands. It represents the ultimate impartial rule of global law.
Let's contrast the two big players. The General Assembly is the main deliberative organ. It's got 193 members, and every single state gets exactly one equal vote. It carries this immense weight of world opinion and moral authority. But then you contrast that with the Security Council. Just 15 members. It acts as a highly concentrated executive body with real, legally binding power.
Section 4. The Security Council's power, the world's executive branch.
Let's break down that council. Out of the 15 total members, 10 of them are non-permanent. They get elected by the General Assembly for 2-year terms and are carefully balanced to represent places like Asia, Africa, Latin America, and Europe. But let's be real, the true muscle lies with the 5 permanent members: China, France, Russia, Britain, and the USA.
Those 5 hold just an immense amount of influence, and it all comes down to the veto. A single no vote from any one of those permanent members completely stops a resolution dead in its tracks. It renders the council totally powerless to act. Fascinatingly, though, if one of them just abstains from a vote, that doesn't actually count as a veto.
Now, to fully grasp the judicial side of UN authority, we really have to define how the International Court of Justice, or ICJ, enforces international law.
The ICJ has what's called compulsory jurisdiction. Basically, for specific treaty disputes or cases involving reparations when an international obligation is breached, the court can literally compel nations to submit to its jurisdiction. They don't need your voluntary case-by-case agreement.
Which brings us to our final part, Section 5, Universal Human Rights, the moral heartbeat of the UN. Article 1 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights is a big one. It fundamentally changed history. It establishes that rights are not just granted to you by a government, they belong to humans simply by nature. It asserts that everyone is endowed with reason and conscience, which sets an absolute, common standard of achievement for every nation on Earth.
So why does this matter so much? Well, because this declaration ensures that severe human rights violations anywhere are no longer just some internal domestic issue that other countries can ignore. They constitute a direct threat to international peace. Persistent violations can actually prompt immediate Security Council action. Plus, this document was just so incredibly influential that its exact provisions were scooped up and incorporated into the constitutions of nations all over the globe. And this pivotal document didn't just stop in 1948. It laid the groundwork for specialized protections worldwide. For instance, it directly paved the way for the 1959 Declaration of the Rights of the Child, providing special protection and opportunities for children's healthy development. That was a massive leap forward in global humanitarian standards.
As we wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you pondering a provocative question drawn straight from our source material today. Considering the massive, idealistic goals set out back in 1945, has the United Nations actually justified the role for which it was established? Have they succeeded in their primary mission, or does the blueprint desperately need an update? Look at the evidence we've explored today and keep questioning.